Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, NDIS Top Tips and Q&A. Your presenter today is Robyn Lang and my name is Annie and I'm your facilitator. We begin all our webinars with an acknowledgement. So we acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians past and present on whose lands we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country, and we respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. I'd now like to introduce you to Robyn, our presenter for this evening. So Robyn started her work venture with MS as the Peer Support Program Coordinator in 2011. In 2014, Robyn took on the role of the NDIS Advisor, where she works to help others to understand the significance of the NDIS and its intricacies, the eligibility criteria, the opportunities the scheme offers to help people lead a more ordinary life, the role of the local area coordination, and how to request reviews of decisions that potential participants may require. Robyn has also developed NDIS resources, including information sheets, frequently asked questions, and webinars and workshops for clients, NDIA planners, and local area coordinators, all of which are a culmination of her ongoing learnings of the ever-expanding NDIS space. Robyn is very much committed to the concept of the NDIS and to helping people get the best possible outcomes from it. Okay, so I'll now hand over to Robyn. So just bear with me while I click a few buttons here. And you should shortly see Robyn's screen and she will begin the presentation for you.
Okay, Annie, has my screen come up?
Yes, it certainly has. I can see it perfectly clear.
Brilliant. Thanks, Annie. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for this webinar. And I hope, as it is a Q&A, you've come armed with a whole lot of questions for me. So before we start in on the questions, I just wanted to quickly run through, there may be some people online that don't know a lot about the NDIS. So I just want to give you some very brief pointers about it, just so that you're really aware of what it's all about. So the NDIS is the biggest social reform that's changed the way supports and services have been delivered for people living with a disability. It promotes choice, it promotes control and social and economic participation. So I'll just unpack that a little bit. In the past, under the old system, people did not have their own package of money that they could use in a way that they chose, that gave them more choice and control. In the past, most money was given to organisations like MS. It was called block funding, and it was given to us by state and federal government. And as an organisation, we made decisions about the supports and services that we would offer to people living with MS. Well, the landscape has changed completely. If you become a participant in the NDIS, you receive a plan and you receive funded supports within that plan, and you have a budget. And you get to choose who provides you with the service. And if they're not providing the right sort of service for you, you have the control to turn around to that service provider and say, I'm now withdrawing my funds from you and I'm going to another service provider who will give me a better service. It's a big change. And the scheme is also there to make sure that people can participate in their local community, and that they can hopefully have more economic participation as well. It's a whole of life approach. So while you have to be into the scheme before you're 65, it doesn't stop when you hit 65. You are in for the rest of your life, unless you choose to leave, or unless you go into an aged care home, in which case you would then need to transition across to aged care services. So if you went into a retirement village, you could still keep your NDIS going, your participation in the scheme going, but if you go into an aged care home after the age of 65, and you've been a participant before the age of 65, then you would have to leave the scheme. It is not means tested. So it doesn't matter what your financial circumstances are. It doesn't matter if you own your own home. It doesn't matter if you're renting. It doesn't matter if you have a share portfolio. It doesn't matter if you're working. It's not about your ability to pay for supports and services. It's about the need you have because of your disability for supports and services. It ensures equity of access. And what I mean by that is it is a national scheme. It's the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So it doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter what council area you're in. You should be receiving the same supports and services that anybody in a similar situation to you would be receiving no matter where you live. And finally, it provides something called, and these are not my words, this is the language from the NDIS, it provides reasonable and necessary supports for people. So nobody is funded for anything that the agency doesn't consider is reasonable and necessary for you to be able to lead an ordinary life and complete activities and get out and about in the community. So that's just a brief overview of what the NDIS is. Just quickly, to be eligible, you have to be under 65 years of age when you enter the scheme. You have to satisfy residency requirements, so you have to be an Australian citizen or hold particular types of visas. And if you're interested in that information, the NDIS website has a great deal of detail about what the residency requirements are. This last one is the important one. Just because you have MS does not mean that you'll be eligible for the scheme. You have to be able to evidence that you have an impairment, disability, or condition that is lifelong. We know MS is, but here's the important point. It stops you from doing everyday tasks by yourself. So you have to be able to give them evidence that your MS is stopping you from doing just everyday things that everybody else takes for granted. And if you've got any questions about that, there's plenty of time at the end. So hopefully you've got your questions written down and ready to go. I wanted to give you some top tips, and this is about getting into the scheme. So it's always better to explain your MS symptoms from the perspective of a bad MS day. And I know that can be difficult because almost everyone I speak to who lives with MS tries to be positive about it. But you're probably not doing yourself any favours if you sugarcoat it. They need to understand what a bad MS day is like for you. So think about those days when you've had to do a lot of stuff. Maybe it's been hot, you've had a bad night's sleep, and things are just not going well, and you're going to have one of those days. So always keep that in mind when you're talking about MS to somebody from the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Having goals is really important. The goals that you have are the bedrock of the supports and services that you'll receive. So you will only receive funded supports that are based on the goals you have. And I think this is a whole change for a lot of people. And nobody's ever asked me what my goals were. And so if somebody did ask me, I'd have to have a really good think about it and maybe have a chat to someone else about it. So family, friends, or even one of our NDIS engagement team here at MS, because they can help you sort out what your goals might be, talk to you about how your life is now, what your life used to be like, and what your goals are, so that you're really, really clear before you have a planning meeting about what your goals are. And if you're already a participant, maybe thinking about goals going forward in year 2 or year 3 or year 4 or year 5, because your goals can change. So they're very important. Make and keep copies of all the documents you send to the agency. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people living with MS who have sent in their documents, and they call a couple of weeks later to see how those, if you've put in the access request form, how that's progressing through the system, and they've gone into that big black hole. So if you've got copies of all the documents you've sent to the agency, so that might be the access request form, it might be an OT assessment, it might be a letter written by an allied health professional like a physio. It might be evidence from your GP. It might be a support letter from us. Always make and keep copies and hang on to them. Put them in a folder with NDIS written on it so you can always go back to them. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of stress. We know that people who are really well prepared for their first planning conversation and their annual plan review conversation, we know that those people who are well prepared are getting better outcomes. Now, if you're not in the scheme yet, or you're at the stage where you've got a planning conversation coming up and you're a little bit worried about being well prepared for that conversation, we can help you. We help lots and lots of people get really well prepared for that planning conversation. We have a planning conversation resource document that we complete with you over the phone. It takes about an hour. And we give that document to you. It's your document. It's a reference point for you, and you can also hand it over to the local area coordinator who's running the planning meeting, or the NDIA planner, so that they've got that evidence of the things that you've thought about that you want to have a conversation about when you have your planning conversation. So this is another really important point. So if you're not in the scheme yet, you might not know what a local area coordinator or an LAC is. An LAC or a support coordinator is there to help you to understand your plan, to understand how you use the money in it, to make sure that you're using it in the best possible way you can. So you're using the funds, because there's nothing worse than having a plan sitting there with a budget that's nice and healthy, but is not being used because you don't understand your plan. So your local area coordinator or your support coordinator is there to help you. No question is too silly. These, especially the first time you get a plan, they can be really hard to understand, and you need to start to feel confident with it. And so using your LAC or your support coordinator is exactly what you should be doing. I'll just quickly run through. There are 3 ways that your plan can be managed, and you'll be asked how you want this to happen. And you need to understand the options about managing the funding in your plan so that when you have that planning conversation, you're making a really well-informed decision. So there are 3 ways plans can be managed. The NDIA can manage all the funds for you. And that means that you don't have to touch any paperwork. All the bills are paid for you. You never have to kind of worry about, oh my God, have I paid that bill? Or I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do there. There's only one drawback with having the NDIA manage your funding, and that means you can only use something called registered service providers. And that might cut down on the choice of providers that you've got in your area that you can use. The second option is to have something called plan management funds put into your plan. And that's funds in your plan that are specifically set aside for you to engage the services of a plan manager. And it's like having your own private bookkeeper or accountant who helps to, does pay all your invoicing and helps to keep track of where the funds are going. And you can call on them to, if you're worried about where you're up to in your plan and whether you've used too many funds and you're not going to have enough for the year, they'll help you just make sure that you're budgeting properly in terms of making sure the funds are spread out across the year so that you're not running out of funds at the end of the year. The other good thing about plan management, having plan management funds put in your plan, is you don't have to use registered service providers if you don't want to. So it immediately gives you a bigger range of choice of service providers. And I'll just give you a quick example. So lots of people might use a cleaner or somebody to come in and mow their lawns because it's not something they're able to do. And that person is probably not an NDIS provider, but you would like to continue to use them and use your NDIS funds to pay for them. under this plan management model, you could use that person and they wouldn't have to become a registered provider, so that you can keep going with someone that you may have been using for a number of years. So that's really good to know. The third option is where you self-manage all your funds, and that means you pay all the bills. You need to get on the portal and make sure you understand what you're doing, uploading invoices and things like that. A lot of people really like that option because it gives you the greatest flexibility, but you do have to recognize that you need to be on top of all the paperwork. So if you're struggling with cognition or fatigue, if you already find it difficult to manage your paperwork as it is, then self-managing your funding might be something you want to think twice about. If you want more information about managing the funding in your plan, again, you can always call MS Connect and they will either be able to answer your question, give you an information sheet about it, or put you through to one of our NDIS engagement team members to give you some more in-depth information. Always good to remember, if you're unhappy with an agency decision, you can always request a review of that decision. So some people I know have put in their access request form and they've received a letter from the NDIA saying, look, I'm sorry, but it doesn't look like you're eligible for funded supports through the scheme. You can actually ask for a request of that. You can ask for a review of that decision. And equally, if you get a plan and you're not happy with the funded supports that are in it, you can request a review of the plan. And your local area coordinator or your support coordinator should be able to help you with that if you need that review to happen. So as I said, if the supports in your plan don't meet your needs, you can request a review of that plan. If your circumstances change, you can also request a review of your plan. So this is an important thing to remember. Plans generally run for 12 months. Now, we know for a lot of people living with MS, especially those people living with relapsing, remitting MS, that you might have some really big ups and downs in a year if you're relapsing, and your circumstances might change considerably. If that is the case and there aren't enough funds in your plan for you to be able to manage to do all the things you need to do because you've had quite a bad relapse, you can request a review of your plan. You can also request a review, for instance, if you sell your home and move to another one and you need some home modifications so you can access areas of your home. Or if somebody who was living with you was providing you with quite a high level of informal care and that person has either got a health issue, their job circumstances may have changed and they may need to work more hours. They may have changed from being a uni student and they helped you around the house with stuff and now they're working full time. So any change of circumstances that means that you're struggling a bit, you can request a review. Biggest tip of all, call MS Connect if you've got any questions about the NDIS, or if you need help to get prepared for that planning conversation, or if you need help applying to the NDIS. And at the end of tonight, we'll have a slide up that has MS Connect's phone number on it. So I've skipped through pretty quickly those tips and tricks. And I think it's now time for hopefully everybody to start to hit that question button, and Annie can then start to give me some questions that you've got. Annie, have we got any up there already?
Yes, we do, Robyn. So Anne has asked a question. She currently attends MS Yoga twice weekly and would like to attend the yoga retreat, which is held over a weekend. She says she has the funds in her package already, but how does she go about doing that?
So it would, so this is, This is a typical question that that your local area coordinator, if you've and I'm not sure whether you've got support coordination funds in your plan, or if you've got a local area coordinator, and if you know who that local area coordinator is. That is a typical question that you should be putting to either your local area coordinator or to your support coordinator. Annie, would Anne be able to tell us, if she's happy to, whether she has a local area coordinator or support coordination funds, or whether or not she knows who her local area coordinator is?
Okay, I'm sure she would have heard that. So Anne, please type in and let us know if you do have a local area coordinator, or if you have that in your plan. And
I
while
think the
Anne
other,
sorry, go on, Robyn.
the only thing I was going to say was, if Anne is, sometimes local area coordinators, although their role is to help you, they can be difficult to get in contact with. They can be sometimes a little slow to respond. And if you are having difficulty with your local area coordinator, or don't know who your local area coordinator is, again, that's a good time to give us a call at MS Connect, and we'll be able to reconnect you with your LAC, or help you understand the sorts of questions that you can ask that person.
Okay, great. Anne's just responded saying that her plan is self-managed and her LAC is available. So I'm assuming that means she is available to chat to.
Yes, yep. So it's difficult for me to, in this webinar, to give you instructions on how to go about that. And I guess, again, my biggest tip here is go to your LAC.
Okay, great. All right, Anne, I hope that's answered your question well enough. Another question's come through from Jacqueline. Jacqueline's asking, if I need a review, is there likely to be a long wait?
Sorry, I'm laughing, Jacqueline.
Oh.
Look, it's as long as a piece of string. I know some people get really quick responses when they request a review of a decision, and some can wait, 6-9 months. Another tip here is, and this is really, being deadly serious here, if there is any risk at all to your ability to stay living in your home, if there's risk to your health, if there is risk to relationships or relationship breakdown because of the lack of funded supports in your plan, then you should be making that quite clear and being very specific about that, because that hopefully accelerates the decision-making process, Jacqueline. So, I actually can't give you a definitive answer on that, and I know that the agency is reluctant to do a review of a plan if somebody is heading towards the end of their current plan. So say if they're at the, let's say the 8 or 9 months in, they're probably reluctant to do a review of a plan, because they know that at the end of the 12 months period, in 3 months time, you're coming up for your annual plan review. So if you can hold out for that annual plan review meeting. If you can't, put in all the paperwork. You've got to be very clear about why you need extra funds. Any supporting letters, any extra evidence always makes a difference. But yeah, it can take quite a long time.
All right, thanks, Robyn. And Jacqueline has just said that helps. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Another question from David around that. When you do process a review, what kind of evidence or documentation will the NDIA require in order to process the review? Are they looking for things from a doctor, or how would you evidence the changed need that you have?
So, David, it's always good to have something from your, and I'm not suggesting that everybody needs, if you're needing to have a review, that you go out and spend an awful lot of money on getting specialist reports or anything like that. But if you can get from, let's say, for instance, you see a physio and you've had a change and your mobility is worse and you need a higher level of supports or services or equipment or changes to the home, then letters from a GP, just a one-pager. It's a letter of support just outlining what the need is and what the change has been, or similarly from a physiotherapist, if you have one, if they could write a letter. Sometimes support letters can be written by people at MS. If you've got someone that can support you at MS, then that would help. So it's also being very clear about, I suppose, you making very clear about why you need the change and what's happened for you and the outcome for you if you don't get what you're asking for.
Okay,
hope that
great.
helps, David. Yep.
Yeah, I hope so, David. Thanks, Robyn. Eloise is asking a question. I think I can actually answer this one myself, Robyn. She's mentioned that her GP is unsure how to fill out the access request form, given the strict criteria. Are there any resources to help with this? And I can actually tell you, Eloise, we do actually have a webinar that was geared for GPs and health professionals to help them understand the access request form. And I believe that that's on our website currently. Is that right, Robyn?
Yes, it is, Annie. Yep, absolutely right. Yep.
Right. And if you can't locate it, Eloise, I'm happy to send you the link after we've finished up tonight. I'll email it through to you. I do have your email address, so I'll send that off to you. So yes, there is that resource. So that's great.
There are two more resources, Annie, that Eloise might be interested in. We have a one-page information sheet, and it's called the GP. It's a GP information sheet, and it's exactly what you need to hand over to your GP when you're handing over the access request form. That gives them some tips about the sort of information that the NDIA is looking for on that access request form. And the other thing we have is, I did a webinar, and I'm sure it's up on our website, and it was geared towards clients about how the best way to get the access request form filled out and the sort of information that the GP or other allied health professional needs to put on that access request form. So we've got a few resources that can help you with that. The other thing I would say to you, Eloise, is that if the GP does fill out the access request form, I would suggest that it would be a good idea to call us at MS Connect, and they'll put you through, they'll do an allocation for service, and they'll put you through to our NDIS engagement team. And one of the team can look at the completed access request form and give you some advice on whether or not they think there's enough information there. Which means you can then, if there's not enough information, then go back to the GP and say, I think we need this, because this access request form is the only document, unless you've got supporting evidence that you can put with it, that the NDIA uses to make a decision on eligibility. So they can only go on the information that's provided. So the better the information that's provided, the more likely you are to get into the scheme. And we're always more than happy to look at an access request form before you send it back to the agency to let you know whether or not we think there's enough information there. So Eloise, I think you'll be well and truly supported to hopefully get the best access request form information filled out. Can I just add, though, that we have seen some really good access request forms submitted to the agency, and the agency has come back and said, no, we don't think you're eligible. So I don't want to dishearten anybody, but you can do all the work in the world and have it looking really good and still get a no. But that doesn't mean no is a no. Then you request a review of that decision. Okay.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Robyn. And that leads on to another question from Diane. Diane isn't in the NDIS, and she's asking what is the first steps that she should take in order to apply.
Okay. Yep, very easy, Diane. All you need to do is contact the NDIS, and I'm sure the number's at the end of the slides, but I'll just, in case if anybody wants to take it down now, it's 1-800-800 110, and all you need to do is ring that number, and what you do is ask for you just get through to the call center staff, and that's all they do is deal with questions like this. And all you need to say is, could you please send me an access request form? And that form comes out to you, and then you need to fill out the first part of it, and then your GP or other allied health professional needs to fill out the bulk of the document.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robyn. Stephanie has asked, what type of services can you put on a plan? I am someone with a low impact from MS and was wondering what can be allocated, what money can be allocated towards, or what the money can be allocated towards in the plan.
Okay, so Stephanie, just quickly, if somebody's living well with MS, you're probably unlikely to be eligible. But if you are having difficulty with everyday tasks, as I said before, then, you know, and you can evidence what they like to call a significant level of functional impairment, sorry, that's their language, not mine, then you would be eligible for funded supports. And some typical supports that people living with MS get would be things like domestic assistance. So that would be help with cleaning, help with laundry, you know, hanging out heavy sheets, towels, help with making beds, getting fitted sheets on and off, meal preparation for people who have limited fine motor skills, or who suffer from or experience high levels of fatigue or heat intolerance, and it's difficult to be in the kitchen preparing healthy meals. Some people get things like garden maintenance, so could be mowing lawns, it could be trimming hedges, it could be cleaning windows, cleaning out gutters because you're unable to climb ladders. It could be things like an OT assessment, an occupational therapy assessment, to look at a fatigue management plan, to look at cooling equipment like vests or cooling mats that go under your sheets on your bed. It could be an OT assessment to make recommendations about home modifications that you might need. So if you have to step into your shower, if your shower is over your bath and you have to step into your bath and you're at risk of falling, or if you've got a big lip that you have to step over to get into your shower. All sorts of things that make life easier for you. Some people get shopping assistance, so somebody to go shopping with them, maybe because they experience a high level of fatigue and some cognitive impairment, and it's difficult for them to manage shopping lists and getting all the things that they need to get. Assistance to get out and about in the community. Those sorts of things are really typical supports that somebody might get funds for in a plan. Oh, a couple of other things. Physio assessments for personalised plans, and some people might get modifications to a vehicle if they need some mods to their car. So that's a general, like, that's not everything, but off the top of my head, they're pretty usual things that people living with MS might receive in a plan. Transport assistance. Sorry, I keep thinking of things. So if you're unable to use public transport, or if you're working or studying, then you might be eligible for transport assistance. And another really important one is funds for continence equipment. So a lot of people living with MS experience issues with bladder and bowel. And if you need equipment, if you need annual reviews or regular reviews by a continence specialist, that's all funded in your plan. And unlike the old way of funding continence equipment through CAPS program, which was capped at around I think it was $570 or $600 a year. There is no cap on the amount of funds that somebody might get for their continence. You get the money that you need to see you through a year of catheters or pads or whatever it is you need. So that's a pretty good snapshot of the sorts of supports and services somebody might receive.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robyn. A question from Michelle now. Michelle says, do you think the funds towards travel will improve? My husband currently has funds to visit a physio 3 to 4 times a month, yet not the funds to travel there. It currently costs by taxi about $80, even with a taxi card. We can only afford one of these per month. None of this makes sense. So that sounds very frustrating for you, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, there are 3 tiers of transport assistance that you probably know about, and the tier 1 is the least amount of money, tier 2 is in the mid-range, and tier 3 is the highest amount of money. There have been so there's something called the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and that is where people go after they've requested a review of a decision made by the agency and they're still not happy with it. It goes to an external body which is completely objective and removed from the NDIA. And there's been some decisions made by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal in the past for people who are requesting more than tier 1, tier 2 or tier 3 based on their need, not just on that very strict criteria, because it should be about a person's individual experience. So I know some people are getting higher levels of transport funding. It's tricky. It takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time if you do want to go down that track. Michelle, Michelle, if you want more information on some of those decisions made by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, I can send you a link. So if you could just check in with Annie at some stage before we finish up tonight and give her your contact details, either your phone number or your email address, and I can send you some information about that. But sort of a bit of a wishy-washy answer there.
All right, and that's fine. Thanks, Robyn. I actually have your email address, Michelle, so I'll forward that to Robyn after we finish the webinar tonight. Okay, so moving on now, Angela has asked a couple of questions. The first part, are you aware of any courses that can help you prepare to be self-managed? And then the second part, also, who determines what is reasonable and necessary? How do you make sure that what you are paying for, if you are self-managed, will be seen as being reasonable and necessary? I do not want to end up having to repay money.
Yep, good questions. Okay, so in terms of getting some upskilling so that you can self-manage your plan, you can actually ask for that when you have your planning meeting. And some people, it's my understanding that some people who are currently plan managed do have some funds within that category for the plan management company that you use to help you build your skills so that you can, it's called capacity building, and it helps you to understand how you go about it and helping you to become more independent in actually then moving from plan managed to self-managing your funds. So Angela, it is possible. I do know people have received funds in their plan to build their skills because one of their goals is to self-manage their plan. In terms of reasonable and necessary, there's it's part of the NDIS Act. And the NDIA, which is the National Disability Insurance Agency, which is the agency tasked with actually making the whole scheme work, are the ones who decide what is reasonable and necessary for someone to lead an ordinary life. And if you're worried about paying for a support or a service and then being audited and being asked why you paid for that, and them deciding it wasn't reasonable and necessary for you to spend those funds on that service. I guess the best advice I can give you is you either check in with a local area coordinator to see if it's something that they think is reasonable and necessary, or if you've got a support coordinator, check in with them. Or if you believe it is reasonable and necessary that you have that and that you spent the money on that support or service, and you can give evidence to excuse me, to how it was a benefit to you, how it helped you meet your goals, and how it's improving your life for you, I think that's a very good thing to do. So if say for instance you decide that you want to pay for a physio and you're not sure whether or not you've overspent on your funds, and you think, oh, what if they're going to come back and audit me? You can ask the physio to give you a report on the benefit of the service they're providing you with and how it's improving, let's say, your mobility or your upper body strength or your balance, which all goes towards, making sure you're not a falls risk and things like that. So if you can give evidence as to why you used it and the benefit it gave you, you're much more likely not to be asked to repay the money. That's probably that's as much as I can say on that one, I think, Annie. So have I answered all of Angela's questions there?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I believe you have. Thank you, Robyn.
Okay.
A couple of more questions have come through.
Okay.
Sorry, you go,
sorry,
Robyn.
Annie. Yeah. And if my answer's not clear, please just, don't just sit back and go, oh God, I still don't understand. Ask Annie again and I'll try and re-explain something, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Please don't be afraid to keep typing through to us. So
Yeah.
I'll happily relay the questions through to Robyn, and I know Robyn will happily answer. Thank you, Robyn.
Okay.
Okay, so a question from Daniel. Daniel's saying, where are we? I'm not with the NDIS, but for a very bad, oh, sorry, I'll just have to reread this and make sure it makes sense to me before I relay it. I'm not with the NDIS, but for a very bad cognitive issue, and sounds very overwhelming in my own. Is there anyone that can help me? Daniel, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking of us. So you're not with the NDIS, but you're experiencing cognitive issues and you feel overwhelmed by what's going on for you. Is that correct? If you can type in and let us know. So if someone's not with the NDIS and obviously are experiencing cognitive issues, Robyn, that is a impairment that obviously their life would be impacted quite heavily. So that would be something that they can access funds through the NDIS. Yeah. Would that be right?
Absolutely. That would be right. And also, Daniel, if Annie and I have got that question right and you are struggling and it is overwhelming, it's overwhelming for people without cognitive impairment. I've been in this space now since 2014 and it's not easy. So if you are feeling like that, please just call MS Connect, because we can step you through each stage of the process of getting the access request form, helping you to get it filled out with your GP, helping you if you put that access request form in and the agency says yes, you're eligible for funded supports. We can then help you to get ready for that, something called the planning conversation, where they work out what supports and services you need. We can be there sometimes face to face with you at that planning meeting. Sometimes we can't, but we will always try and be there over the phone. So for instance, the other day I was helping a young man who had a planning meeting, and I was on speaker and I just sat in the background to support him. and just help him through that planning conversation with anything he might have forgotten or not understood. So Daniel, we have an engagement team, NDIS engagement team, that does that day in and day out. So hopefully that that helps you, and you'll give MS Connect a call and we can get you started.
Yeah, absolutely, Daniel. And the MS Connect number, it's on the slide that's coming up shortly, but it is 1800 042 138. Okay, so I think there's one more question before we finish up. And if anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to type them in. We still have time. We're here till about 7:30, so we still have time to take your questions. But the last one that I've got here on my screen is from Wendy, and Wendy's asking, does the NDIA contribute to medication costs?
Hi, Wendy. No, they don't. And some people say, oh, well, why not? Those medication costs are so high. And while I recognise they are, the NDIS is very clear about where its boundaries sit in terms of what it pays for. And one of the, if the NDIS paid for everybody's medications, the budget would blow out. And medications fall under the health sector. And the NDIS is very clear that they're not going to take on the responsibility of other sectors. So there are things they won't pay for that the health sector needs to pay for. There are things they won't pay for that the housing sector should pay for, or education sector should pay for. They're very clear about their boundaries. Sometimes people get caught in the middle between the health sector and the NDIS, both having an argument about whose responsibility it is, and that person is sitting in the middle going, well, you know, I really don't care who pays for this, but I need somebody to pay for it. But they are very clear. They will never pay for people's medication.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, isn't it, Robyn? But as you say, if they did, the budget will blow out completely.
Yeah.
So Wendy's asked who does pay, and I think you've answered her question, Robyn. It's the health department.
It's the health sector, and I know for some people that, you know, the disease modifying treatments that you're on are expensive, and if people don't have private health insurance, it can be very expensive. But yeah, that's just the fact of the matter, that the NDIS has made that decisions that medications are the responsibility of the health sector and not their responsibility. There has been a change to some other parts of health sector, and NDIS were spent a lot of time arguing over some things like wound management, some of the catheter equipment and catheter changes, and there has been some give and take here, and the NDIS, and in fact there some decisions came out today about what they will pay for now, and they are starting to pay for more things that did fall under health in the past, but it will never be medications, as far as that's my understanding.
Okay, thanks, Robyn. All right, another question from Judy. I'm currently not in the NDIS, but my concern is that currently I am 5 minutes from home, but the company I work for will be moving to the city, which will take 2 hours out of my day. At the moment I cope, but with losing 2 hours out of my day, I'm wondering if the impact will have, what the impact will have on me in regards to my fatigue. And I suppose around that, will Judy then be in a position to need more supports as a result of her fatigue?
Yeah, yes, you would, Judy. So, so now if you're managing okay, because you know you live only 5 minutes away, but if you're looking at a 2-hour commute, I think that's the time that you do apply for the NDIS, because I can imagine that if you've got an extra 2 hours on your day, then getting home and doing all those other tasks that you managed before because you didn't have a big commute will be very difficult for you. And if you want to keep working, if that's one of your goals, either because, well, it could be for any number of reasons. It could be because you like the stimulation, you like getting out and working, and it's, you know, part of what you love to do, or it might be because financially you need to work. Could be both of those reasons. And your goal is to keep working, but you know you'll struggle, then the NDIS can put in place those things like some help with meal prep, with cleaning the home, so that you can conserve your energy for getting to and from work and doing those other things that you want to do maybe out in the community, and not having to make a choice between, you know, I can't go out on a weekend because I've got to clean the house, but I'll be so exhausted that I won't be able to do anything. I'll have to spend Sunday in bed. It's that sort of thing. The other thing I'd say, Judy, is we have an employment assistance program at MS, and it might be worthwhile just having a chat to them to see if they can help you with anything as well. Sorry, it's not an employee assistance program. Sorry, it's an employment support service. Employee assistance program is the psychologist. I knew as it came out it was wrong. The employment support service. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Robyn. That's all good. Judy's just added that she only has between 3 and 5 years before she retires, and she's added also that she's already in the employment support services. So you're obviously accessing those services, Judy, which is great. And they may be able to help you. Maybe you can arrange to work from home if that's at all possible. Maybe 1 day a week, if that helps. All right, so Eloise has written in, why does the access request form say that they don't cover grab bars or grab rails? And I believe that the many bathrooms would have them already. Wouldn't they be a common thing for someone?
Hang on, just let me pull out an access request form. I've got one here, and I'll just look at the wording. Okay. Where is it? Sorry, I just need to go back to it.
That's all right, Robyn. It's all good.
Why can I not see it? Oh, is it under self-care? Showering, bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, caring for own health. Assistance required does not include commonly used items such as non-slip bath mats, bathroom grab rails and handrails installed at stairs. Look, I don't know why they say that. Lots of people, I agree with you, lots of people, and it's one of the things that people get in their plans is an OT assessment so that they can have grab rails put in. If you haven't filled it, have you, if you haven't, I would feel if you need them and you don't have them and you're a falls risk, I would be putting it in anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. A bit difficult. Again, Eloise, it might be worth a call to MS Connect to talk through that. It's a bit hard for me to give detailed information on that now because I'd need to talk to you about what you do need, what your current situation is and what your MS symptoms are, and, you know, how you're coping and what we would write in the access request form around that.
Okay, thank you, Robyn. Another question from Judy. Would I be covered by the NDIS to get assistance with house cleaning, etc.?
I can't say yes categorically because I don't know your situation, but it would be one of the most common things that people living with MS would be getting in their plans would be help with domestic assistance. Mostly because of the fatigue, the lack of upper body strength, balance issues, and if you're struggling to do those everyday tasks, and people are sometimes a bit like, want to be disrespectful, but a bit like a frog in hot water, and you become used to thinking that, oh, well, it takes me 5 days to clean the house because I can only do one room at a time. Well, that's not how most people clean their home, and if that's how you have to clean the home, then and you want to be living in a home that's clean and well maintained, and that's one of your goals, and you still want to keep working, then yes, getting domestic assistance would be one of the things that would be provided for in your plan.
Okay, great. Thanks, Robyn. Jackie's asked, she has home modifications in her plan and a quote was required. Her OT sent a report through with the quote to the NDIA, and she's asking, what is the best way for me to put pressure on the NDIA so this doesn't get lost in the black hole?
Squeaky wheel, so without harassing them, regular phone calls to see how it's progressing. And I think too that if you can let them know the effect it's having on you not having that that home modification approved. So if you think you're a falls risk, if you can't access a part of your home without those home modifications being done, if you're at risk of not being able to stay in the home, or if it means somebody else is having to provide you with a level of personal care that neither you either and or you or the person who's providing the care, it's there's a burden of care on that person, or you're losing your sense of independence. All those things would help in hopefully pushing that decision a little bit faster. But
Okay.
really, it's squeaky wheels, unfortunately.
It certainly is. All right, thanks, Robyn. One more question has come through. Wendy's asking, does the NDIA cover specialist fees?
No. Oh, well, it depends on the specialist. So if you need to see a specialist a continence nurse or a urologist for an assessment, then they would. They pay for specialists like occupational therapists and physios, but they wouldn't pay for a neurologist.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Robyn. No further questions have come through, Robyn, at this stage, and I take note of the time at the moment.
Beautiful timing from everyone.
Yes, it is actually. It's like it was planned, very well planned, in fact, which is great. So, Robyn, I know that there are a few more slides just to finish up the webinar this evening. So that slide there that you've got on the screen at the moment, that is the MS Connect number, and I know Robyn's referred to MS Connect a number of times, as have I. So please contact MS Connect on 1800 042 138 or email through to msconnect@ms.org.au. So if you have any other questions that you've forgotten to ask, or that they come to you during the night or whatever, please feel free to give them a call. So on the next slide there, I think there's some information on what the MS Connect team does. So there's 10 reasons there to call them. They have up-to-date evidence-based information about MS, expert advice on managing symptoms, information on minimising the impact of MS, support for people who are newly diagnosed, information about treatment options, information on education programs, the ability to have connections with other people living with MS, referrals for appropriate services in the area, in your area, I should say, extra support for you and your family, and respite options to give families short-term breaks. So that's only 10 reasons to call MS Connect, and I think they're pretty hefty reasons. So if any of those, if you want any information or support, please feel free to give them a call. So on the next slide, I think we're talking about the peer support program, and there you'll see the 3 lovely support coordinators. So we've got Kat, Kim and Ange, and Kat is in New South Wales, Kim in Victoria, and Ange is in Tassie. And they have peer support programs for people living with MS. It's either one-on-one support through phone calls, face-to-face groups, and there are a number of groups already established. There are tele groups which connect via the phone. It's either once a fortnight or once a month. There are Facebook groups as well for people with MS, for carers, and also for young carers as well. So if you'd like to be involved in any of that, please feel free to give MS Connect a call. So the next slide talks about the Get Your Act Together tool, which is on our website. This tool focuses on the common symptoms of MS, emotions, fatigue, continence, cognition, pain, and heat sensitivity. It's a really good interactive tool that helps you determine the level of your symptoms, and it can provide strategies for you to manage those symptoms. So please feel free to visit the website and search for the Get Your Act Together tool. And you'll be issued with a personalised report, which is great. Earlier we talked a little bit about the employment support services, and that's here at MS. And if you contact them through the MS Connect number, you'll have an MS specialist employment service person speak to you about if you want to do really well at your work, stay at your work, or go back to work. Whether you want to stay in your current job or find new employment, they'll be able to assist you. And they'll also able to assist you with disclosing to your work if you have done so already, or if you're yet to do so. So there's a lot of support there for you. So on the next slide, there's a bit of information about the NDIS, which we've been talking about all evening, Robyn, haven't we? So as you can see there is our ms.org.au website, and you can search there for specific information. And we also are a registered provider, and we can help you across all our states to navigate the NDIS. So moving on to the next slide, My Aged Care, we've just put in this slide just to assist you. You may be close to My Aged Care or close to being 65 years or over. If that does apply to you, you can get supports and services through this government agency, and the number is there should you wish to contact them. So thank you very much for attending the webinar this evening. It's been lovely having you all on board. I'm just going to go back and have a look at the questions and see if any more have come in. And we've had, Anne has said, thank you very much. It was a great webinar. Wendy, great information, appreciate it. And there is one last question, I believe, from Shushrik. And I'm sorry, Shushrik, I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly, but they're saying, I've got cataracts after my MS. I have checked with the doctor. How could I get help with this? Is that
okay? So yes.
Sorry, go, Robyn.
Oh, sorry, Annie. Yeah. So if you've got vision impairment as well as MS, then you could get all sorts of help. And again, it would be quite a detailed conversation we would have with you, and we'd work through the things that are difficult for you to do on a day-to-day basis to work out what you might be eligible for under the NDIS. So again, I think Shushrik, it's really good if you could give MS Connect a call and maybe talk to one of our NDIS engagement team, and we can talk you through the sorts of things that the NDIS might be able to help you with.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Robyn. So if there's no further questions, we invite you to stay on for a little bit longer after we've closed the webinar, as we have a very short survey and we would love to hear your feedback on the webinar tonight. So nothing else has come through at this stage. So Robyn, thank you very much for presenting all the lovely information today. There's been a hell of a lot of questions, and I hope that we've gotten to all your questions. And I know you've answered them as thoroughly as you can, Robyn, so thank you for that. And thank you everyone for attending. If there are any further questions, please don't hesitate to call MS Connect on the 1-800 number. Yeah, we wish you all the best with your NDIS journey. So we'll close for now. So once again, big thanks to everyone out there. I wish you a lovely evening and all the best. Take care. Bye for now.